Hi guys, my name is Badger. I'm one of the coordinators here in the giant gallery space. I'm here with this lovely thing to show you around our amazing NatureMax show.
So lots of you will know that we've been studying nature spaces, and because of that I was really keen to bring you to a giant gallery here in Bournemouth to show you what lots of different kinds of artists do in terms of making work and responding to both environmental plight of the planet, the sense of the human connection to nature, and also how we might see nature as something to preserve, to care for, in this really, really wide variety of ways. So Badger, tell us about this first piece.
So we're here in the Matt Hale Hall. Matt Hale is an artist who has gone out into nature and found pieces from local woodland areas and then augmented them by adding in artificial and man-made material. His discussion here is on the Anthropocene and how humanity has had an impact on all nature around it. So he talks a lot about microplastics and things like that in his work, and finds that no nature is uncompromised anymore. No nature.
If you look just further up onto the wall, beyond the Matt Hale work, we've got some Andy Harper work on the wall. Now, we've looked at Andy Harper before in class, and the thing that is really striking about it, one, it's very, very large scale as work, but also that when you approach the work, you actually start to pick out different details that otherwise might not be obvious. And in so doing, where we think of something that's quite psychedelic and very colourful and otherwise, I guess, benign, as we close in on it, we might start to see things that actually make us feel quite uncomfortable. There might be something in there that's like bone, or reminds us of something that is about kind of viscerality or organic matter, that no longer is simply just like empty nothingness just for colour and pattern's sake, but actually something that becomes meaningful about nature itself and also our relationship to it. Badger's doing a really good job of showing you all these close-up spaces, but if you were standing in the gallery now, you would be able to tell quite how vast these canvases are.
So if we turn around and look back across the Matt Hale Hall, and then you can see that these large canvases on the wall, they're 5 foot square, so they're really quite big, and really very imposing on this space. So as we come around to the end of the Matt Hale Hall, then we move into a projection exhibition by Kelly Richardson. And this piece is called Twilight Avenger. So this is a video installation which is an augmented still image and video. So she's gone out into nature and found beautiful vistas. So it's just ending now and restarting, you'll be able to see. And then added on her own animations on top. So you can see this stag here is augmented onto the scene.
So when I was speaking to my 11-year-old daughter, Imogen, about this just a few minutes ago, she said, well, Mum, why is the animal like a ghost? And I wonder if, if we're thinking about this in class, if we look at things that are obviously of nature, that aren't disconnected from it, yet they're represented to us in a way that shows them in a kind of ethereal or otherworldly way, what does that suggest to us about how the artist sees the relationship she might have to nature? What does it tell us about the artist directing us to think about or consider how we might respond to nature and nature spaces? Is this actually meant to be something that leads us to question whether we kill nature, whether nature has to exist only as a memory, or whether that actually nature itself is something that is so extraordinary that though we can't call it supernatural, we might also think that it's beyond us mere humans in some way. I want you to really think about that. Anyway, as we come back out, I'm going to ask Badger a few questions about gallery in general. So this is obviously a former department store. It's a beautiful space, lots of space for you to hang and curate work of different sizes, different scales. How did you work out how to put the work into the space for this particular exhibition? What were some of your key considerations?
So when we were putting this exhibit together, we were working with the curator. It's a chap called Paul Kerry Kent. who's very knowledgeable on a lot of artwork, and he worked with a lot of artists to really decide how best to put these pieces in place. We really use the fact that we've got these two separate halls, so we've got the Matt Hale hall here, and then moving around the corner here, we have this second NatureMax hall to be able to exhibit two installation pieces while still having a clear separation between them. We also use these beautiful large windows to really bring in a lot of light and really illuminate during the day. Obviously it's grey because we're in the evening now, but during the day you have a lot of beautiful illumination coming in here.
So I know we're kind of pushed for time because the gallery is actually closing in a minute, but I particularly want to have a look at the Sandra Katanan work. Now for us as photographers, this is really interesting because again we've got an artist who's working, I guess, in an interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary way, using photographs or base photographs and then building upon them in a kind of digital painted form to create scenes that are at once familiar, yet again this idea of them being extraordinary. So on the screen now you can see an image in which at first glance we might see a snow-laden bracken and trees, and actually on closer inspection we see that there are drips of colour and things that actually don't belong in what we expect. The colours are beautiful, they're very subtle and soft, and what's really brilliant about this work actually also is that these prints are relatively small by comparison to a lot of the other work that's on display in the gallery. Badger just pans round, we can also see on the wall some Alan Rankle paintings. I'm going to talk to you about Alan Rankle in a little bit more detail in class, but essentially he is taking traditional or conventional modes of painting, landscape painting, and subverting them to bring us into a kind of post-apocalyptic space where we might suddenly start to unpick or unravel a sense that nature won't last forever if we don't maybe take better care of it. And as such, we could consider him to be perhaps like a modern day protest painter using traditional landscape painting methods to convey his message. And I think we've got time for just one more, so if we go over to Esther Teichmann, Badger. Now, what do you think of this? This is an unusual situation because we have prints on the wall, but we also have a wall itself.
Yes.
It's become part of the artwork.
So the Astro Typeman piece is at once photography and installation. So this blue wall is specifically chosen to frame this larger canvas on the wall that's got this print on it. And then these two pieces here are both photography by the artist. I saw a very fascinating interview with Teichmann a few weeks ago where she was talking about how when she was starting to work on these pieces, she was working with her family, and a lot of her work revolves around the intimacy that she can get through the camera lens.
So lots of you will know Esther Typeman actually is one of my favourite photographers, and we're looking at work here that is an intersection between what I think of as a kind of environmental awareness but also feminism, maybe. But as Badger says, because she's worked in the past mainly with models who in some way been extremely close to her, we have the strong sense of intimacy and connection both to the artist but also an intimacy and connection with the nature that either surrounds or in some way engulfs the model. Just one last thing, as Badger pans round, we can see the piece of work that you would say is the most paused over in the gallery.
Yeah.
It's by an artist called Tessa Farmer. What do you think of this work, Badger, and tell us about it?
So this piece that we can see in front of us here by Tessa Farmer is an installation piece that is her discussion on the interactions between nature and the environment and the impact and fragility of hunters and prey. So she works through taxidermy and creates these incredible scenes. You can see some details here of all of these bees hanging. And then as we come up close, you can see that there are little scenes on the pieces themselves. A lot of people are very intimidated by this work, and a lot of people also spend a lot of time really focusing on all of the beautiful little details.
So we're actually looking at something, again, this idea of something that's completely natural, completely to be expected, but also something that brings in elements of the fantastical, of fairy stories, folk tales, something otherworldly, supernatural, all in this natural setting within the NatureMax exhibition. So, hopefully that's a really good overview of just a small selection of the key works in this exhibition. I'm really, really grateful to you, Badger, for taking the time to film what we missed when I forgot to record the other day when we did our live show.
It's okay. I'm glad I could help.
So here we are at Giant Gallery in Bournemouth. Please do come along when it reopens again in March.
In April.
In April, sorry.
Okay.
Come and visit the gallery yourselves. I think you're going to love it. The next exhibition will be
A photography show. It's going to be very exciting.
It is for us especially. Anyway, Badger, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.